So welcome, Martin, to the show, to our second episode in this series. Thanks for taking the time.
No, you're welcome, Ralf. I'm really looking very forward to our next discussion.
Me too, Martin. Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Very welcome. Last time we were talking about the very beginning of your career, which was basically taking a camera from a friend, taking some pictures on the beach, not even knowing what you were actually doing, but it turned out to be some nice prints that came out, and you liked it. So this was the ignition of your career, and this was already during your time at in service at the Army and the Navy later on, where after that you took your money together, bought a camera on your own, and started taking pictures on yourself. And at this time, as I understood it, is that you were first disappointed by your pictures, or by the results that you got, but the ignition was there, and you wanted to continue. And what happened after that? So, how did you continue, and how did you get into photography after that?
Yeah, well, Ralf, I think where we left off at the last time in our last discussion, as you rightly said, I was in national service at that stage, and I was practicing then photography as a hobby, really. It was nothing more than that to me. It was frustrating, to say the least, because being in, as I said, in the film days, you process your roll of film and you don't even know whether it's yours when you go pick it up. And but I was practicing really as an amateur, completely aside from national service, and I was serving at that stage on the strike craft. So I was just trying to get my national service over with as quickly as I could, so that I could get back to mainstream. In fact, I think even at that stage, I hadn't even considered photography as a career. I only considered photography as a hobby. And I was trying to get as good as I could at taking really good photographs. And that's where I was until I think it's like I said to you in the previous discussion. Sometimes one's steps are ordered. Sometimes somebody said a comment to our previous podcast where somebody said serendipity, which is, I think, by chance. By chance things have happened. I think it was a little bit more than by chance. I think it was by divine intervention, because perhaps it was something I didn't know I was either good at or I could actually do. So it was from that moment onwards that I took my step into professional photography.
Most people would give up at that stage, so they take it for a hobby or for private use. But what happened that brought you the idea of taking this to a real job, or to maybe even build a career for your life?
Yeah. So, and I'll be as bold as saying, even at this point, I still didn't think that I would be able to do photography as a pro, or even as a profession in that sense. And the captain of our strike craft flotilla, a gentleman by the name of Simpson Anderson, that's his surname. He was, for some reason, and I didn't realize this, but he obviously was watching me, and he took a keen interest in everyone. He was an amazing person, an amazing leader. In fact, he became the admiral of the Navy shortly after that, and he deserved that position because he honestly took interest in the servicemen who worked under him. So I didn't even realize it, but he was watching me, and he must have known that, I was doing photography as a hobby. And the one day, and this was shortly before I was going to leave, I'd almost finished my 2-year service, and he called me in, and he made me a deal that I could not refuse. And he said to me, if I give him 2 more years of my life, he will teach me photography, or he will make sure that I get taught photography. Again, at that point, I was a little bit confused. I mean, I was quite excited about the prospect of learning, but I didn't know the details. And then he said to me, if you accept my offer, then I'm giving you 48 hours to pack your goodies together, and you will turn up at the one Recce Command, the main head office for reconnaissance forces. And he said, and you will be a reconnaissance force photographer for us. And I said to him, but sir, I don't even know what I'm doing. And he said, I will teach you. We will teach you. Just accept the job, and we'll take it from there. And he also committed to come and see me from time to time to double check on me. So being the captain of the strike craft flotilla, he was also obviously in the reconnaissance force command units or command center from time to time.
Just trust the process. It will all fall in place.
Yes, so within 48 hours, I must tell you, Ralf, I arrived at this beautiful big administrational building for the reconnaissance command, and I was issued with a color darkroom. I was issued with a black and white darkroom. I'd never seen a darkroom before. I'd never smelt the smell of the chemicals and but there was. I was issued with so much film that I didn't even know what was lying ahead of me. They issued me with a Hasselblad system, a Hasselblad camera. I thought it was a video camera. I'm so embarrassed. When I looked at it, I thought, why are we doing video? Because it's got that little wheel on the side. And I mean, that's how naive I was. But anyway, it looked very fancy, and they promised to teach me, so I signed for that, and then they issued me with the biggest Nikon system I have ever seen in my life. It was the old Nikon F1s with the motor drives, bulk film winders, or film units, whatever it's called, and then all of that stuff. And that all happened like within a day or two, and I was in this world that I knew. I was so excited about it, but I was so concerned letting, specifically Captain Sensor Anderson down. I hadn't realized at that stage, but they needed a reconnaissance photographer. Obviously, something had happened, and he sort of put 2 and 2 together, and he thought, okay, maybe this guy, we can teach him what to do.
When I see what I've learned while being in your classes, the amount of knowledge you need to make some good pictures. So I'm really curious, how did you learn in that time? How did you teach yourself, or did you have someone who teaches you, or did you read? How did you acquire the knowledge how to use these professional cameras and how to take the pictures in a proper way that they can be used? And obviously they won't just take pictures. They wanted to have good pictures to document the service, or document what's going on.
Yeah, they weren't looking for art photography.
Yeah, sure.
They were looking for clear, precise moments that and non-negotiable moments, as they would call it. So
Documentary.
You don't come back with nothing, And you must remember, Ralf, the country was at war at that stage, so there was a lot of money going around when it came to preparing people for service and what have you. So I went in, and I just, it's like my father said to me when I went into the army, and he gave me a good bit of advice, and he said to me, don't come first and don't come last. So whatever you do, just be somewhere in the middle so the eyes are off you. And then he also said, if you don't understand, just ask. So I decided that I don't understand. So whenever the opportunity comes up, I'm going to put up my hand and say, sorry, I don't understand this.
Yeah.
I mean, I might have understood it if I'd completed the course my father had bought for me, but that was not the way I learn. I don't, I need on-the-job pressure training. That's where I really thrive. So this was the perfect place for me to be able to get some foundational teaching, and it suited my personality as well. So that's why I'm saying one step sometimes need to be ordered in that sense, that you end up where you're supposed to be for whatever you're supposed to be doing. So that's where, so that was it. So whenever they called you into the briefing room to tell you you're going to be doing this today, or you're going to be doing that, or they need photographs of this, or you need to fly off to somewhere to go and get photographs and come back, I just used to say, I don't understand. I've never used that camera. I've never done this. I've never, and because there was, sort of money around as well, so it was never a problem. It was, okay, well, go down to the stores, collect your little envelope of cash, whatever it was, and go and see Uncle Jack at the Air Force Command, and he's going to teach you how to develop a roll of film, or he's going to teach you the zone system, or he's going to teach you. And then when you come back, they accept that you now know. So no more of that. Now we get the job done.
Okay. Good advice for everybody who's learning photography. Ask. Just ask, and don't rely on intuition and trying around, but ask someone and get some help. It's an advice for life in general.
No, completely. So that 2 years, I think, just about that I spent in that environment. I mean, I learned so much, honestly. But I'm now talking about foundational learning of photography. I'm talking about learning the photographic system, how it worked, how to process films properly, how to print properly. And this was all technically proficient, not artistically proficient. At the same time, I had this beautiful studio with lots of studio lighting. I'd never worked with lighting before, so I still needed to learn how to use the lights. Only many years later in my career did I actually figure out how to light. There's one thing about switching on lights and photographing something. There's another thing when it comes to actually using light properly. I never learned that in the military or in the Navy there. I never learned that sort of stuff. I just learned how to use the equipment and under pressure. I learned how to work with it under pressure.
Yeah.
And I think that for me was the foundational teaching that I actually needed.
Yeah. It's like wedding photography. You have this one moment you have to capture, and it must be perfect at this time, because this moment never comes back. But in the army or in the Navy, when you capture these moments, and a lot of moments, they all don't come back. So you have to be very professional in the use of the camera and very professional in the work you do in order to actually capture everything you have to photograph.
Completely. I 100% agree.
Okay. And so for how many years did you do this job? 2 years, you said.
2 years, yes. So there was an additional 2 years that I worked. I worked at the reconnaissance command here.
Okay, so safe job, something that you liked. You could have stayed there for longer, couldn't you?
I think I could have, because it was a very interesting job. And you never knew where you were going to be tomorrow. So
100%. And you don't have to worry about equipment. You don't have to worry about money. Everything is there. Yeah, why not stay there?
So it was I think from an interest point of view, I might have stayed. Yeah, just because, and that's what I thrive on. So the excitement of a new project, a new challenge, and also in my personality, the thrill of knowing that there's no back door. So you either deliver or, and fortunately, I never hit the or. I never, sort of come back and say, sorry, I didn't get it. I was very fortunate that every time I was able to sort of meet their expectations on what the brief was, or what they actually required. So from that point of view, I could have stayed on just because it was a very interesting job.
Okay, but you left two years over, and then you left the service, and now how to continue that?
I think at that stage I realized, Ralph, that I didn't just enjoy photography now. In this case now, I didn't even want to call it a career, but now as a serious amateur starting to become a professional photographer in a way. I started to realize that this is something that I could definitely do for a living. But I started to, I had a sort of an idea that I could actually do this commercially, and I could then work for myself in that sense. I didn't have much equipment because obviously all the equipment that I used was not mine. And I'd built up a little bit of equipment, but nothing, compared to what I would need. So when my national service was up, the 2 years was up, I decided I was going to leave. It was also at that stage that I'd met my wife, or I'd met my wife-to-be during the military service. And I also realized that if we were going to get married soon, that I would need something a little bit more than what I was busy with at that stage. And I would need a more stable life too. So I decided I would leave for those two reasons. Set up a commercial studio of some sort, get into photography as a profession, and then settle down and get married.
Okay. And so the commercial studio was your income, your source of income then, and how did it work out?
Well, Ralph, if you remember, I said to you that my father didn't really want me involved in art of any sort, and photography was like a sort of a compromise, but he was sort of okay with it. And the fact that I was now employed by the government or the military at that stage, he was okay with that. And I guess when I came out, I had matured a little bit compared to coming out of school and being dumped into that environment. 4 years in that sort of environment will definitely put a little bit of hair on your teeth. And I think he acknowledged that as well. So he became my number one supporter at that stage. So
now it was a real business, it was a real job, so it was something solid, and now you got the support of your father. Okay.
I expected not to get too much support from him because of the past where he had concerns. But I was very surprised because when I told him that I will be resigning and I'm going to try to do my own thing, he said it's fine. And he said, you've got a room here by us and we will feed you and we'll look after you. He even built a darkroom for me that I could continue processing and printing on my own. And then he financially helped me out at that stage with purchasing equipment, which I had to pay him back for. With interest. So he was no pushover, but he was there. He would come to visit. He helped me when it came to renting the premises that I wanted to rent. He was there when it came to painting the studios and the reception areas out. He was there when it came to sign writing, the sign. He was there. He became my number one supporter. And I'm very grateful for that.
Okay, so now the second life as a photographer with own studio, with business running, this was in Johannesburg, or where was this located?
Yes, this was in Johannesburg, yes.
So now you are in Cape Town, so there must have life has come in the way, or life has challenged you. What happened? Why aren't you still in Johannesburg in your photo studio?
No, look, Ralph, I was born in Johannesburg and I grew up in Johannesburg. So, and at that stage, my folks were looking after me. So I needed to stay at their house. So at the later stage, I'd moved to Pretoria and then after that to Cape Town. But at that stage, the business was in Johannesburg. My wife-to-be was in Johannesburg, and that was my life, and that's where I was. It was a commercial studio, but I specialized in portraiture because I saw that there was at least some money to be made in portraits. So whether it's portraits of babies, whether it's portraits of of children, whether it's portraits of people, whether it's portraits of even animals, or, there was an income because people needed photographs of themselves. Don't forget, this was pre-cell phone days. Okay, so we talking here about the sort of the mid-80s. So there was no cell phones, and so if you wanted to take good photographs of yourself, you would need a really good camera to do that, or a photographer to do it. So there was that opportunity to be able to do that type of work, and that's what I specialized in, and it went very well for quite some time. But I did have a business partner come in with me, and then we continued to grow the business together.
Okay. Later on, you were in teaching. How did you come to teaching? You built a business around teaching photography. So how did this shift happen?
Wow. Okay. I was almost scared you're going to ask that question. I never realized at that stage that I could teach anything or anyone. I've already said that. I mean, I've already said world's worst student now suddenly needs to teach. No, that ain't going to happen. That was not on my radar at all. But Ralph, life sometimes throws curveballs at you as well. And unfortunately, the business partnership that I was involved in didn't go well. And the business unfortunately suffered for that. And I woke up one day and I didn't have a business. My business was gone. And how do you respond to that? Well, at that stage, again, teaching was not an option for me. I didn't realize it was an option, but I needed to go and find a job. Now, I needed to find a solid job. I thought of maybe going back to the Navy, and they would have accepted me. There wouldn't have been a problem there. But I felt that would be a step backwards. So in desperation, I took on a job as a salesman to sell cameras. I could use them. So, and it was all that was available at the stage, immediately, that I could continue to just sort of pay rent and pay my commitments. But it was a very tough time. It was, again, big lessons at that stage for me as a young businessman to realize that you are held responsible for all your decisions, whether they're good or bad. And so I went into, I started to work 9 to 5 selling or giving people advice on camera equipment and selling camera equipment. And that's eventually how I ended up in Pretoria, because a gentleman who was running a very big photography retail business had a couple of branches of photographic shops, independent photographic shops. He got to meet me along the way. Somehow our paths crossed, and he put down an offer on the table and said, I want you in Pretoria. I'll give you a share of my business. It was a small share. It wasn't much, but he said, I will give you a share of the business. I need you to relocate to Pretoria, and I need you to come and work with me. And we took the decision to do that. And I'm going to mention this now because I think it's important as part of certainly my journey. But it was a difficult decision, leaving the comfort of your parents' home at that stage. Well, in fact, we had left because Anita and I got married during that time, and we had bought a small house out in the suburbs, and we were just settling down into that. And now I had a job that at least was helping me to pay the bond and helping to put food on the table, but it was tough. But there was a church in Pretoria that I wanted to attend. It eventually came down to that. So when I was offered this opportunity, the overriding factor to say, yes, I will sell my house that I've just bought. I will pack up all my goodies, and I will move over in a career that I'm not actually excited about because I'm a photographer. But it's an opportunity because it's closer to the church I wanted to attend at that stage. And so we did. We resigned, and we headed off to the sunny suburbs of Pretoria to pick up our life there, and yeah, a completely different life, one that I didn't expect, based on the fact that I was a photographer now. And I was on the wrong side of the counter. Instead of buying cameras, I was now selling.
But Martin, you know what? Selling these cameras gives you a lot of knowledge about all the different models and what's available on the market. So there's always something to learn. And when it according learning, I would like to go just back a moment. What was your main learning in the service, the national service, and what was your learning in this this studio that you were running? And so in these different stages, what did you learn?
I think, yeah, it's a very good question, Ralf. I think the military taught me to work under pressure. I think that it was a non-compromised pressure, so there is no excuse, and at least it gave me that foundational understanding that you know, your word is your word, and if you say you're going to do it, you must do it, and there's no excuse. So I think it taught me that, but it also, one of the big lessons that came out of there was we were going into, or black and white photography at that stage was also important, and I needed to do black and white developing and printing. So I also put up my hand and I said, I don't understand. So they said, I'll need to go and see Uncle whatever at wherever, and he was going to teach me. When I went there, this guy was a specialist at Ansel Adams' zone system. So he wasn't artistically proficient. So I couldn't look at his work and go, oh my goodness, where do you come from? But he was technically proficient and he knew how to teach. So I spent some time with him. And I think in that time, just learning contrast management or contrast control, which you could then apply to color film photography as well, really took my photography from one level to another. That was another big lesson for me, which came along as quite a surprise in the military. So, you know, it was really, I think those two things specifically was important for me. And you know, with starting the business, I suddenly also realized that even in those early days, that you have to build a following. So people don't just turn up on your door. In those stage, advertising was like through the newspaper or magazines. And at one stage, for some reason, I won a major competition for a baby portrait I took. I mean, I was doing portraits just to earn, you know, it's for clients, but this particular client was so impressed with the photograph that I'd taken of their child that they entered it into, at that stage it was the Living and Loving, which was a major magazine, and they entered it into the competition on my behalf without asking me. Next thing, I get a call from a journalist to say, you've won. I don't even know what I've won. And before I knew it, I had people standing outside the studio with babies everywhere. In fact, it was one of the reasons I didn't want children when we got married. And later in our marriage, because I said to Nita, now I can't handle crying children in the studio. I don't want to have them at home as well. Today we got 3 beautiful children, and I wouldn't trade them for the world. But at that stage, I think I realized that publicity is very important, and you need to be able to put yourself forward that you have some kind of a following and a referral base. So
Yeah.
I realized in business, people don't just turn up at your door just because. They don't owe you any favors. I also realized that the bank is not your friend. It was another big lesson. At that stage, I thought everybody's my friend, but I soon realized the bank is not your friend. And those were big lessons I needed to learn as we headed off to Pretoria but I didn't know what was coming, so I had no idea. And that answers your question regarding teaching, because it was at that point that the teaching came along.
Okay. As you were running your business, your studio in Johannesburg, what was the main learning during that time?
Yeah, so I think those were the two things that I mentioned.
And sorry to interrupt you, because I'm specifically asking because the business failed. And, I have a similar story. My first business did the same. I have a business partner. It failed completely. And with heavy debt and things like that, you don't want to experience this ever again.
Yes.
But there's always a learning out of that. And what's especially the learning out of that?
It's like I said, I realized at that stage that again, I've said again, the bank is not your friend. Until they are your friend when you're making money. And then, of course, it's growing your business. So it was buying more processing machines on hire purchase. At that stage, I'd even opened up a picture framing service as well. So we were acquiring all of those machines, and the business was growing really well. And you actually think that nothing can go wrong. So it was a difficult, from a business point of view, I realized you held responsible, regardless. Yeah, there's no back door. When you make these big decisions on buying equipment or growing businesses or employing staff or whatever it is, you held responsible. So you've got to be quite serious at that.
Yeah.
I think from an artistic point of view, what I did realize as well is that, and I mean, remember at that stage, it's commercial photography. So it's not art photography. So it's not like the business I'm involved in now, where it is very different from an artistic point of view. But I also got to realize that I needed to be able to manage my artistic time properly. So, when the studios were full and there were lots of people coming in and it was loud, I had to make sure that I had a good night's sleep the night before, because even though I was young, the next day you have 3 or 4 days of this continuous people coming in through the studios. One brings a child, next brings a dog, next one's got a St. Bernard, next one's got a... By the end of the day, you are completely and utterly tired. So I also realized that these things in business are important, that you manage yourself for the benefit of your customers properly.
That you block out time for yourself and for your art, basically.
No, I think if I had to go back to that time, I would. No, I didn't understand that. No.
But now that's something.
Work.
Yeah. But now this is a good advice for, especially also for our students and artists in the Art Photography Academy. Block out your time. And what I also find interesting is this learning that you say you have to build your following. It's not about just making a great picture and then the world runs after you and you are famous. It's long, sustainable work to build your following, to present yourself, present your work, exchange with others in order to build your position. Yeah.
Yes, so that was a lesson that came out of that. I mean, later as we progressed into social media and we progressed into just being able to communicate on a far bigger scale, I want to almost say made it easier, but I think it's made it more difficult when it comes to managing business, to be able to sustain that type of a following. Yeah, a real following, not a plastic following. There's a big difference. There's a real following, and then there is the airy-fairy following. So
okay, what's the difference?
I think the airy-fairy for following is, and may I say it, is where I think people will like something, or but it's almost like they blowing smoke up your, what. It's more like that, but it's nobody who ever really is going to connect with you on a professional level. Whereas your real followers are those people who honestly connect with you and will go to the ends of the earth with you and your journey because they truly believe in you. And they will tell people about you and they will refer you. It's like what I get at the gallery at the moment when there's a ring on the bell and somebody comes in who I haven't seen for 2 years, and they've now, turned up in Cape Town, and they've made sure that part of their 1 week stay in Cape Town includes a visit to come say hi, because they had bought a piece of mine in the past and they wanted to come and just say thank you again. That's a real following. It's people connect with people. People buy from people. And I think that was the thing that I started to learn already in that early business, in that early business experience.
Okay, so far an interesting life. As we come to the end of this episode, an interesting life, many changes, a lot of learnings, and now you're in Pretoria as a salesman in a photo shop. But the story goes on, and
Yeah.
that is something that we will cover in our next episode, where we will learn about, hear about how this change came to Photography Academy, and later on the moving to Cape Town and the decision to leave this business again. So there are some challenging and interesting times ahead, and I'm really excited to hear this in our next episode.
That's good, Ralph. Stock up on the coffee because it gets even, I don't want to say interesting because that's a little bit forward. It even gets more complex from here on inwards, or here on outwards, whichever way you want to see it.
Yeah, I can really imagine, because what you are delivering now in the Art Photography Academy and in your life is something that is based on profound experience and profound learnings. And so really excited to hear them in our next episode. Martin, thank you for taking the time today, and see you next time in our next episode on this podcast series.
Thanks, Rob. I look forward to seeing you again. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.